I was 27 years old when I was diagnosed with one of the rarest cancers in the world. Up until that day, I led what my mother-in-law likes to call an enchanted life. I was engaged to my high school sweetheart, Nicole, and I was about to graduate veterinary school at Colorado State University. I had two beautiful dogs and a house full of terrariums holding my favorite animals of all, my reptiles. Now, to some of you, a house full of snakes, I hear the, yeah. To some of you, a house full of snakes might not sound like paradise, but it was everything that I wanted. Halfway through my senior year, I started getting fevers every night. I thought that I just had a flu, until I noticed that the whites of my eyes were turning yellow with jaundice. I was worried, but I was young and healthy. Surely, a diagnosis and an appropriate medication were right around the corner. As the negative test results kept pouring in, I became more concerned that it was something more serious. It was early on a Saturday morning last fall when my internist called to give me the devastating news. A liver biopsy had diagnosed me with hepatosplenic T-cell lymphoma. My doctor couldn't tell me very much other than that it was very serious, and she had made an appointment for me to see their oncologist first thing Monday morning. As soon as I pulled myself together, I turned to the internet. I had 48 hours to wait for my appointment. Far too long for my type A personality to go without any information. Wikipedia had only one sentence about my cancer. It read, hepatosplenic T-cell lymphoma is a rare and generally incurable form of lymphoma. There was nothing even remotely positive or hopeful out there about my disease. It's only been diagnosed a few hundred times worldwide since it was first identified over 20 years ago. And it has been almost uniformly fatal. The average survival time, just 8 months. So there I was, 27 years old, on the verge of becoming a husband and a doctor, and knowing that despite my best efforts, I was probably going to die. Things started moving pretty fast at that point. Within days, I took a leave of absence from school, Nicole quit her job, we packed up our clothes and our dogs and said goodbye to our friends, and got on a plane to come home to New York. I found out that even in medical emergencies, they really don't let snakes on planes. It wasn't until I got to Memorial Sloan Kettering that we learned that with the most recent advances in current treatment, there have been a handful of people who've survived my cancer. It was pretty scary when the best specialists in the world couldn't tell me very much about my disease, but at least they gave me a sliver of hope. I had to be hospitalized for the type of chemo I would need. They put me on the 12th floor, the same place where my grandmother had died of multiple myeloma only 4 months earlier. She liked to worry about me, and I'm incredibly grateful that she didn't live to see me get sick. My mother was not so lucky. Ultimately, after 5 intense rounds of chemo, I was able to get into remission. But the treatment that offered the best chance for a cure was a bone marrow transplant. The transplant process is painful and dangerous, and you spend weeks in a drug-induced fog while your body withers away. I was lucky to have a sister who was an excellent match, and even luckier to get through the transplant last December with minimal complications. Throughout this entire process, I've been amazed by the diagnostics and the treatment I've received. Within weeks of coming to Sloan Kettering, the level of detail to which we knew my specific cancer was incredible. Tests with names like flow cytometry, fluorescent in situ hybridization, immunohistochemistry, and cytogenetics would take several graduate level courses just to understand how they work. These tests gave my doctors specific details about the defect in my cancer cells, as well as what surface proteins those cells expressed. In addition to the chemo protocol I received, they used antibody drugs that targeted these specific proteins. Going from knowing next to nothing about my rare cancer to knowing it so intimately is an incredible feat of modern medicine and technology. In the past century, we've seen a medical revolution so amazing it's difficult to even imagine its scope. But despite the wonders of modern medicine, the practice of medicine is still in its infancy, and one of our generation's greatest struggles is the treatment of cancer. We're just starting to see breakthroughs, and some form of cancers that were a death sentence 20 years ago are considered readily treatable today. However, the central tools of cancer treatment, chemo and radiation, are brutal on the patient, and at times can be almost as dangerous as the cancer itself. To emphasize how far we've come and how far we have yet to go, I'd like to take you on a short but scary journey through my medical history. After a relatively healthy childhood, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease during college. This is an illness where your immune system turns against your intestines. My symptoms were mild, and with some anti-inflammatory medication to suppress my immune system and a specialized diet, I was back to going about my life. However, a very rare side effect of these immunosuppressive drugs are unusual types of lymphomas. That's right, my cancer was caused directly by the medication I was taking to control my Crohn's disease. Today, after Crohn's, cancer, chemo, radiation, and a bone marrow transplant, I'm happy to say that modern medicine has helped me to beat my Crohn's disease, and my cancer is in remission. However, I now have a third problem, graft versus host disease. This is what happens if my sister's immune system doesn't get along perfectly with the rest of my body, and it can be fatal. One has to wonder if I wasn't better off letting my Crohn's go untreated. To add insult to injury, these same immunosuppressive drugs that I have to take after a bone marrow transplant are the very same drugs that I took to control my Crohn's disease and gave me my cancer in the first place. And every morning I have to wake up and take a little bit more. Talk about fighting fire with fire. It's been just over a year since my diagnosis, and I've been in remission for nearly 10 months. My cancer could return at any time, however, all of the early testing has not found any sign of it. I recently moved back to Colorado, and I plan on finishing up my senior year this spring. I'm very lucky to be alive. The credit for this goes not only to my fantastic team of doctors and the incredible support of my family and friends, but also to the generosity of strangers. Over the course of my treatment, I required 16 blood and platelet transfusions to keep me alive. That's 16 different people who had to make the decision to go out of their way and give a piece of themselves to help a stranger. To offset this, we held a blood drive in my honor where 58 people, including many people from Palm Bay, donated their blood. I'm sure many of you have donated blood, and an untold number of strangers will owe their lives to your generosity. Lastly, I have to mention my sister Janine again, who gave me her very stem cells. Her blood is literally running through my veins tonight. I think it's clear to anyone who has sat at the bedside of a chemo patient that we need to continue to push for better cancer treatments. We need to seek out new modalities, not just new ways to package the same chemo drugs. We need smart treatments. And smart medicine takes an investment of money, time, and willpower. Thanks to the American Cancer Society and the incredible generosity of people like you who support them, we're moving in the right direction. Through my ordeal, I've learned to savor every moment of life, and as I stand here this evening in this beautiful building, helping to support an incredibly worthy cause, I know that my life remains enchanted. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for having me tonight, and enjoy your evening.